Welcome to Turning Pain into Purpose with Joeel and Natalie Rivera. In this 4-part podcast, we share the stories of how the heartache and challenges in our lives were the fuel that ignited our passions, called us to become entrepreneurs, and gave us the freedom to determine our destiny and fulfill our life's greater purpose. We hope this show inspires you to believe that within any challenge or pain lies the seeds of possibility for transformation, meaning, and purpose. No matter where you are or what you've been through, you have a unique gift to share with the world. Life isn't happening to you, it's happening for you.
So welcome. We're really excited about today's episodes and really digging deeper into our journey and what we've learned from that journey and being able to share with you some of the things that we've learned that have helped us grow and develop and get us to the point that we are today.
And we are going to be sharing with you our business evolution story from the time that we met until today. And so it kind of unfolded in chapters. So that's how we're going to present it to you. And so we like to call this first part of our journey together transformation, which of course you might notice is the name of our company. So there's a really good reason for that. And when you hear the story of how everything unfolded, you'll totally understand why we chose that word to capture what it is that we do. And so where our story left off, or at least my part of our story, was that I had created a vision board for what I wanted to do with my life when I was finishing up my bachelor's degree. And I had pulled out a calendar and figured out what the Monday was after I was going to graduate. And I circled it and I put start work. So long story short, if you missed it, then you'll have to go back and listen to the other episode where I tell my whole story. But so what happened was the week before I graduated, I found an ad on Craigslist looking for a business partner to run a nonprofit teen center, a coaching center. And so it was exactly what I had put on that vision board. And I met the woman and we went into business together, and I started the following Monday, which of course was the same Monday I had circled like 4 months earlier on the calendar. And so I dove right into running this business that had been running for about 6 weeks. And the reason she had posted the ad is because her business partner had to leave for family medical reasons. And so this was that fateful time where Joeel and I's paths crossed.
And really, we only met for a couple minutes. I had gone in just to drop off some things. Drop off some things and pick some things up. And at that point, I moved away several hours away, and I was disconnected from the company completely. But after a couple of years, I ended up hearing back from my old business partner, and she said, "Hey, this is what we're doing. We would love for you to kind of come and check it out and maybe help us expand." And we talked about a lot of different things. And I'd actually gone to graduate school with her, so I had known her for a couple of years prior to that as well. And so I said, "Let me check it out." We went over there. I went over there. And there was a family get-together, a friend get-together she did at her house, and Natalie was there. And we kind of connected. We started chatting, sharing journeys, and playing the bongos and listening to music and just having a great time. But we really got to know each other at a deeper level at that moment and really understand that we both had a similar vision of life, and that we both had the same passion, the same purpose to really transform people's lives. And it was almost like that knowing, at least for me, it was like that knowing that this person that I was talking to was the person that I wanted to basically not only spend the rest of my life with, but also look at how we can create something together and both fulfill our passion and purpose to make a difference in this world.
And what was so awesome about it was, like he said, it was like we definitely clicked right away. And what's really unique about our relationship, and we get comments and questions on this all the time, and that's that we both always really wanted to be in a relationship with somebody that shared our passions in business too. And that it was partially because we wanted to be able to be on the same page and care about the same things, but also because we genuinely actually wanted to be able to work alongside our life partner, because both of us like to have all that time together and not feel like we're separated like 8, 10, 12 hours out of the day. And so we both kind of had that same desire, which is pretty unusual because most people, it kind of freaks them out, the idea of doing it. But we both always really felt like that would be what would be ideal for us. So when we came together, we had so many things in common. We shared the same passion for helping people, making a difference in our communities, specifically coaching. We both liked working with teenagers. We just had this focus on wanting to help people transform. So it was just such a natural fit for us not only to work together, but also to become partners in life.
And we also were able to really discuss some of the things that we've learned from our own journey as far as business, as far as the people that we work with. And we both wanted to kind of start working with people that were ready to transform, that they wanted to transform. Obviously, we both had worked in the social service field. So we actually started a company, TLC, Transformation Life Coaching, together. And we started doing teleseminars and all these different things as far as that. At the time, I was still a full-time professor at the college teaching psychology. So we were incorporating the coaching business on the side, basically in my spare time and other things, as Natalie basically worked on it more full-time as I was still working.
Well, and again, which I already told the story of what happened to me, but at that point in my life, I had just gone through a massive transformation in my own life and like literally just wiped my slate clean, got rid of everything in my life. And so when we were in this transition to creating this life coaching business together, I was going through a transition myself, kind of in my own metamorphosis. And so you'll notice our transformation services and many of our logos have a butterfly in it. And so it's really because at that point when we met, we were both going through a transformation in our own lives, and we'd gone through many in our lifetimes. It's like, unlike caterpillars that seem like they just metamorphose one time, humans seem to do it multiple times in their lives. So we've gone through a lot of those experiences. And so again, like he had come and we met and we were working a little bit together at that business. And then we both decided that the business wasn't in alignment with what we really wanted. And so I left working with that other business partner because it wasn't a good fit. And that's when we made that transition to saying, okay, well, we both have a passion for working with teenagers, but we both found that we much preferred, if we're going to work with teenagers, we like creating programs, we like training the teachers, we like doing speaking, but that we didn't want to be working in a coaching relationship at that point in our lives, because we really wanted to be working with people that were seeking to transform. So again, that transformation word was, blaringly obvious to us that was the path we were on. And
we were also looking, obviously, part of my background was I was doing already workshops in the past on relationship and different aspects of that, whether it was in the workplace or just intimate relationships, parenting, happiness. And so we incorporated a lot of that into what we started doing. And it was funny the first time, and we've talked about this in the past, it's like when we first started the coaching aspect, it was brand new. The industry was new. There's not much out there about it. And even working with the technology, we're so fortunate now that we have such epic technology. If you're starting any business, you live in that time that is so easy because as long as you can go on a computer, do some research, and even doing a teleseminar, now we have webinar, we have video and stuff like that. And before then, it was even hard to do like the teleseminar. We went to a ski resort for our first one. We have to connect to the internet, and we have to do it like in the lobby because they didn't even have internet in the room. So it was a learning experience throughout the way, but we also kind of started focusing our workshops and some of our coaching, again, to like relationships, to happiness, which I was working on my PhD for, and purpose, and helping people really find their purpose through that process.
And really, that was another big transition for us because, like he said, life coaching was a new industry. We were doing what we could to study people who had forged the trail before us, but realistically, we're talking about a decade ago. There weren't that many people who had trailblazed before us because it was still so new. So we were taking a lot of, training. We ourselves were attending a lot of teleseminars. Again, that was before we had video that we could use through the internet. And a big transition for us, where things really started to click, both for our coaching, but also for all the other things that were to come, was, like he said, we started focusing on life purpose as a niche for our coaching. And so we had focused on things like relationships and happiness, because it's what we had a background in. But we really found that we loved working with people to help them discover what makes them tick, how to use their talents and their passions to do something in their lives, whether it's with their career or whether it's something that they do on the side just for more fulfillment. And when we started working with clients on that topic, it was like that first time where we really saw that coaching and all the aspects that go along with it could be a very viable business. And it was at that time where it's like it was starting to become more known. So we were really growing into something new by being in the life coaching field that long ago. And like this life purpose niche, it's one of the lessons we learned early on, is not only that we loved the life purpose niche, but also how important it is to have a niche when you're a coach. And we've also found that it matters so much, no matter what type of business that you're running, you need to be focusing on a specific topic or group of people.
And we, at our core, we were both entrepreneurs. And so we still had other side entrepreneur gigs that we were doing. Like, for example, we opened up a t-shirt company where we were doing t-shirts for like baseball teams and like daycares and different places. And Natalie was still doing some graphic designing on the side. So it was just exploratory stage. And really we transitioned to a new chapter from that. That's more like a chapter that we like to call like cliff diving. This is our cliff diving experience. And that's really when my contract ended as a psychology professor. And I had gone for, I was contract ended. They offered me to go to a new campus and work out there. And we were really reflecting on our lives and what we wanted to do. It's just really what we wanted to do long-term, or what I wanted to do long-term. And we ended up taking some time off. We actually ended up going to Puerto Rico for how long?
I think it was like 6 or 7 weeks. So it was basically for the summer.
Yeah, so we went for an extended stay. We spent a lot of time at the beach and really just deciding what we wanted to do. We came back to Florida, and at the time, obviously we didn't have employment. We didn't really have a good foundation at the time. So we were staying in an extended stay motel, just really trying to figure out what to do at this point in our lives. Like, we didn't want to just get a job, and we both were offered a job at the time, and both jobs would offer six-figure incomes basically between all of us. And we were like, we both kind of started at it. And then we looked at each other like, I think this is the time that we have to commit. If we're going to do this, this is like, it's all or nothing now. Let's commit to it and let's move forward and just get it done and just cliff dive and trust that we'll figure it out along the way. If we're telling people that they should follow their passion, that they should follow their purpose, then we have to do it as well and take the risk and go all out.
Well, and actually what's funny about it is that at that time, I actually had gotten a job, and it was actually really like, if you're going to have a job, it was like the most awesome job. It was being a career coach through a company that has a contract with the military. So I'd be coaching like military spouses, and it would have been like really awesome. And it even it was like one of those jobs that had like great benefits, and I had like 3 weeks off a year. And so for most people, it would be great. It even paid really, really well. And I actually took the job, and I worked there for 4 days. And it was like, that was when I knew. After 4 days, I was like, it felt so wrong. That part of it felt wrong, 'cause I felt guilty knowing ultimately I wasn't going to stay in the long term, because I really wanted to be running a business full time. And then part of it was also like, for me, and I've always been this way, it was like 3 weeks a year off. That sounded like prison, because I had already gotten used to the freedom of working independently. And even though, there's a struggle that goes along with being a new entrepreneur, it's like, it was at that moment that I realized that the uncertainty and the struggle of being an entrepreneur were worth it, because going back and submitting to being locked in that, that cell again, which I talked about in the other episode, was just not worth it. Even with as good a job as you can get, I just knew it like deep in my bones that it wasn't for me. And so after 4 days, I was honest with them and I said, I know that if I stayed in this position, I'm not going to stay longer than 6 months, and I feel guilty having you invest all this time training me, so I'm just going to back out now. And yeah, and like you said, at the same time, you'd been offered a position that would have paid you really well, but it's just like not what you're passionate about. And so we both said, we looked at each other and we're like, all right, well, actually, I think we were sitting one day by the water, having a drink, and we were talking about it. We're like, you know what? We gotta go all in.
And what we did initially was that we started looking at going back to what we know. So we started trying to develop programs for juvenile justice systems and other programs for schools and different places, kind of creating proposals to be able to give to them. And we're always the type that we kind of follow that inner voice. And we had heard that there was this laughter yoga workshop that they were doing. And it was actually pretty far away from us. It was probably at the time, it was probably like 45 minutes away or something like that. But we're like, oh, we got to go. Let's just go. So we ended up going and we enjoyed it. We thought it was awesome. And we started talking to people. And then someone told us, wouldn't it be great to have like a spiritual magazine that runs in this area? Spiritual personal empowerment magazine. We both kind of looked at each other. Obviously, we didn't have the background in it. And we're like, I think that's us. I think that's something that we're going to be doing. And it was almost like we had got hijacked. It's kind of surreal when you look back at it. It's almost like we got completely consumed with the knowing that this was it, that we had to like embrace this and just go all in. And even though we didn't know exactly what we were doing, but that we were going to find a way just to make it work.
Yeah, and it was really funny because, when we went to that event, it's funny how many things came from that. Because on one hand, we ended up learning laughter yoga and started doing laughter yoga because we had gone there. And that was the first time we'd even heard of it, which even today, now we train people how to do it. So it's paid forward into our lives like many, many years later. But then also, like you said, the seed was planted with that idea. It was funny. It was just like a conversation. I think we were standing in this little like bookstore, and the woman who runs the bookstore was talking about, different events going on, and that it's really hard to know and find information about where to go and how to connect into, finding people who are of like mind. And that's when she mentioned this idea of like, wouldn't it be great if there was a magazine that just not only like inspired people, but, had the resources for people to have a place to go. And the only experience that we had that was relevant was that I had experience as a graphic designer. And actually part of what I'd done in the past was layout for like trade publications. So I kind of had a gist of how to create a magazine physically. And then Joel had experience, going out and making connections in the community. And so that's really all we had to go on. But it was like such an overwhelming feeling, like it's like it's one of those ideas that won't go away. So it's like, we didn't really think much of it when she said it. We're like, yeah, that'd be cool. But then like by the end of the day, we're going, oh, well, maybe that's what we should do. And then within a few days, it was like we just couldn't get it out of our minds. It's relentless.
And what we did actually was that we created like the email that we would send out to possible advertisers. Again, we didn't even know where we were going to print the magazine or how that even worked. All we knew was that we have this vision and we were going to create this vision. So we made the emails. We talked about, we brainstormed, what do we have to do to actually make this work? What do we need to learn to actually make this work? And mind you, it was only a short amount of time from the idea point to when we actually launched the magazine, and we distributed, I think it was like 5,000 magazines in our first launch. But we contacted over 600 businesses within the first month, just researching them, going through Google and just researching all these different type of companies. What kind of companies would we need to reach out to that would actually want to advertise with us? And we would email them. We would spend the day knocking on doors and at night just emailing people. And it was just mind-boggling because we got rejected many, many times. We had this like little mock-up of what a magazine would look like, just the cover page that Natalie had created. And I remember after a few days of just going to businesses and knocking on door, we stopped by First Unity in Sarasota. And it was the last place we were stopping by the day. And we were both super tired. We were like, we'll just walk in this last one. Let's just do it. And as soon as we walked in, we started talking to him. And he looked at us. He said, "Where have you been? We've been waiting for you. And we've been waiting for something like this. Let's sit down. You know, I want to support you. I want to help you with this." And it just kind of snowballed from there.
Yeah. And what was so funny is that we heard that so many times, like in that first year of starting up the magazine. It was like so many people would tell us like I've always wished somebody would do this, or I've been praying for something like this. And like just amazing experiences, because it was a print magazine that was regional. So it's like the kind, like ours, for instance, you would find it if you went to a health food store or like a chiropractor's office, and a whole bunch of people, and places all around the community. So it was a free magazine, and the way it was funded was through the advertisers. But we had people who would contact us and tell us stories about the articles that they'd read in there, and how it transformed their lives. And we had people who would keep every issue that we put out there, and they'd have like a whole collection of them in their house, like every month that we push another magazine out, because it came out monthly. And also it was great. Part of what we both loved about it is that we love to write and we love to teach. And as coaches, it gave us an opportunity to take what we did and like put it down on paper and publish articles in the magazine, which again, then, gave us that feedback that we knew that it was making a difference in the community. And like Joel said, it was really quick turnaround, literally from the day that the seed was planted about the magazine to when the first magazines were in the racks available to the public was 6 weeks. No joke.
And what's crazy about it is that we needed to find writers, we needed to find distributors, we needed to figure out how the magazine was even going to be printed. We need to figure out how we were going to get the money, because we didn't even have the money to print a magazine. We were running very low on funds. We wouldn't even be able to make it in our extended stay for another month after that. So, and we were just fortunate enough, as we got that one person. He told us, "Why don't you talk to these people?" We talked to them, and it was just kind of a stepping stone. Everywhere else we would go, we'd say, "We have this advertiser and this advertiser and this people supporting this in the community," and it just kind of snowballed. We had a lot of support from the community, and we literally thought about having it in 2 small regions, and it kind of just expanded and grew from there. One of the first things we also did was that we contacted Hay House. I remember we were driving, and they called us back and they said, "Yeah, we'll give you free tickets if you market it through your magazine." And we did a little promotional piece for people to submit their stories about their transformation, and that we were giving these free tickets to go to a Hay House conference. And so that created a lot more buzz in the community that we were doing this. And then we started publishing people's transformational stories. We even went to the Hay House conference, and we were sitting there with our lowrider car, because at the time we had a mini, like little SUV, and all these magazines were weighing it down, and we were just handing it to everyone walking into Hay House conference. And from there, we also marketed our workshops, our festival, our events. So it was a great experience overall, and really the foundation to where we are today, and what our business is today, even though it's evolved drastically.
Well, and really, I just want to point out what he just said, that we had workshops and festivals, and we ran conferences, and we had coach trainings and a lot of other things, inner coaching, and we could advertise for free in the magazine. So that was like, to us, that was like gold, because not only was the magazine serving a purpose in the community and helping us make great connections, but it was also a form of free advertising. So it gave us a platform on which to build a lot of the other things that we were doing. And actually, we have a picture of the lowrider car that he's mentioning, because we would be picking up, I think at the highest, we were almost at I don't remember how many actually, to be honest at this point, but like over 10,000 magazines. We got to be so many we couldn't fit them in our SUV anymore. And so at that point, one of our distributors had to come in a big van to pick up all the magazines. I think we were like so overweight, like probably shouldn't have been putting that much in, but it was a lot of fun. And the experience was great. And we're going to get to the story of how it all shifted from there. But a lot of people asked us, like, how did you, like, A, start a business in 6 weeks? And then B, like, how did you do it when you didn't even know anything about the industry? And really, actually, that question led to us developing a program later on that does teach people how exactly we did start a business in 6 weeks, because there is a process. And really what it comes down to is that one of the biggest lessons is that we didn't wait for it to be perfect. We just did it. Like, we recognized, well, we have to do something because we just turned down jobs. So we have to make this work. And if we waited for it to be perfect, we never would have done it. If we waited to be 100% sure it was going to work, then we never would have taken those steps. So it's like, one of the things we teach all the time is that you don't want to just say, hey, I'm inspired. Yeah, it's great. You have an inspiration, and we had that inspiration, but we actually followed through on it with concrete action. And we did whatever it is we had to do to figure out what we needed to do next. And so when people are always wondering, like, how do you do all these things? And that's really the answer, is we follow our inspiration, and then we really get into the nitty gritty of what is this going to take.
And part of it is that we trust, and we don't fear failure. And whatever you do at the end of the day is recognizing that we knew that there was a high probability that we would probably fail at this at the time. Because when you're just joining a brand new industry, trying to do everything so quickly, not even having the finances to even pay for this vision, and just putting it out there the way that we did, but realistically is that we just kept doing the next step and the next step and just trusting and not fearing the possibility of failure, because we were committed to just doing whatever it took. And as long as we put 100% on the table, then, obviously we knew that we did whatever we could have done at that point.
Well, and really another thing that I just remembered about the whole thing was that at the time, because we're talking about, what year was this? This was 2010. And so we were still in the middle of a recession, first of all. And at the time, it was also when the print magazine industry started to crash. So even, like, I remember reading articles at the time about magazines like Time that were losing like 20% of their readership, like, monthly. It was some ridiculous amount, where subscription magazines were failing. And ours was a little different because it was a free publication at a local level. But even that, like, everyone that we talked to, was trying to point out, like, this is an industry that is currently going down. And so you're opening a magazine now? And we're like, yeah. We didn't let the naysayers hold us back. And we also got a lot of naysayers, the haters, being like, yeah, but there's another magazine that does something similar. Aren't you worried about competition? And we're like, no, because we firmly believe that every new business that enters the market, if they're doing something different and they're bringing value, they're going to attract more people to desire the same product. So in our case, it was a free magazine. So there's no reason people won't pick up 2 free magazines. And as far as advertisers went, we offered something different. So there was a lot of people that advertised in our magazine that had never even considered advertising in the other magazines. So that's another thing that this experience really taught us, was that although you have to be aware of your competition, that the fear of competition should never hold you back.
And that's something I've always heard a lot, even with the photography company. When I first started that, is that people would say, there's so many people, it's already saturated. You're never going to make it in that industry. They know a lot more than you do, and blah, 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 blah. But really, at the end of the day, so many people don't do it. That's why it's easy to be an entrepreneur at times, if you're willing to actually put the work in, if you're willing to take the steps to actually just not have the idea, but take the steps to know what you need to do and actually do them. And really the next part of our journey is really the expansion part of our journey. And it all started with creating the digital magazine. We wanted to reach a bigger audience. We wanted to really be able to contribute at a larger scale and really expand what we were doing. And also we wanted to find different ways of doing it. And I remember I was in forums, just really deep diving into magazines, how they work. Because remember, this had been months already, but we were still new at this business. So one of the things that we ended up doing was that I found out that you can publish your magazine through Amazon, through the Kindle. And at the time, it was like brand new systems and stuff like that. It was just kind of rolling out. So I did not know anything about the format that they needed because it had to be a web. So I need to learn how to code and all these different things. And I had no idea about how to do it. And I literally probably did not sleep for like 48 hours trying to figure out how to do it to meet their requirements to make this happen. And really, that part of the business was such a big blessing because, and as you'll see later on, even through our biggest challenges economically, those 48 hours created passive income and created our ability to really launch the magazine to a world audience for the most part. So,
yeah, and that's when our relationship with Amazon began. And we've done a lot of things working with Amazon since then. And so we appreciate them. We love Amazon because it really transformed our business at that point, because it was the first time that we really realized a couple things. One is that we could easily reach a global audience, that the technology was there, and that companies like Amazon were creating platforms where we could reach farther outside of our community, because we loved our local community, but we just always had a draw to be able to reach people at a broader scale. And so this was our first opportunity to do that. And then also we learned how amazing it is to have a digital product, because the digital product didn't cost anything to make. We didn't have to have those print costs or paying people to deliver magazines, and all of the headaches involved in that. So it was like having the two magazines side by side, the print version and the digital version, really just showed us the contrast. And that lesson of the digital product was something that paid forward for us many times over. And the rest of our story basically is that was the launching point for us understanding that the future of our business was online.
and the physical magazine started expanding too, because it kind of caught like wildfire. Like I said, we only thought that it was going to be in 2 regions, 2 areas, and next 2 cities. And next thing we knew, it was basically through the whole Sun Coast, large part of the Sun Coast of Florida. Every time we didn't even know, like from month to month, it was expanding to other cities and regions and areas within the Sun Coast area. And we were like, what's happening here, you know? So it was snowballing, it was growing quickly. We were probably expanding a little bit too fast because the amounts of magazines that we kept having to print was growing a lot faster than we were developing it, but so many people want to carry it. So there was a big need for that. So it was just a great experience of expansion, both in the digital area, but also in our physical magazine. And we ended up also developing a book publication at that point. I don't know if you want to tell them a little bit about that.
Yeah, so again, we mentioned when we first started the magazine, one of the first advertisers we wanted to connect into was Hay House, because ultimately their market was the market we were after at the time. And so Hay House kind of came back around again, because one day we were brainstorming, we were saying, okay, well, what companies out there would we want to model ourselves after? Like, what vision did we have? Who would we want to be like? And we decided that Hay House was who we wanted to be like. And so they're a publishing company, and they hold conferences where their speakers speak, and they, have like a cult following. They're very popular. And so at the time, that was the vision we had for our company. Now it's definitely changed since then, but they were our inspiration. And so we had talked about that, and we just felt so in alignment with it and so clear that that's what we wanted. And then ironically, we got a phone call, like, I think within a week.
Actually, it was the next day after we had the conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. It was mind boggling. Okay. So we get this phone call, and it was somebody that we know had a friend that owned a publishing company. And the lady was also a lawyer or something like that. And so this was like her side business, and other things were happening in her life, and she wasn't able to run it anymore. And so she was looking someone who would lovingly take over her publishing company for her. And so we're kind of looking at each other like, what in the world just happened? So long story short, literally we like acquired a publishing company that already existed.
Gifted a publishing company, which is crazy.
Yes, exactly. And so they already had created, it was a series. I think there were 16 books or something like that. And in the long run, what's interesting about it is that we didn't really need that publishing company that we acquired, because we could have done it on our own. But what the experience gave us was the confidence to say, yeah, we can create a publishing company. Why not? And so it kind of like helped catapult us into another level of not only trusting life, because crazy crap like that happens where you literally have a publishing company just put in your lap, but also to be able to see the bigger vision that we actually could create a company like what we had imagined when we had that brainstorming session. And
as if that wasn't enough, like a year later or a little bit more than that, we ended up actually opening up. We were having a brainstorm with our tribe of silence, which we called it at the time. We used to meet and just meditate for like an hour a week together and just have like a brainstorming in silence. I know it sounds kind of weird, but we were all in the same wavelength for trying to make a difference in the community in our unique ways. And we were brainstorming on some of the needs, obviously working with the magazine and recognizing that there wasn't really a place for independent practitioners in the spiritual personal development community as coaches and things like that would have a place to go. So we ended up opening up a center at that point, which we called the Otteman Center. And we had like 7 different offices, 2 conference rooms and stuff like that. And we would rent them out to these practitioners per hour to be able to utilize them at the time. So it was just mind boggling because we had so many things kind of really going on by 2013, we had like 5 different businesses. We had magazine, we had the book publishing, we had Otteman, we were doing events and conferences, we had coach trainings. And so we were all over the place.
Well, and what was interesting about that center is like, today you would call it like a virtual office center. And at the time, like that was a new concept. There were other virtual offices, but really our focus was different because we were working specifically with like people in the alternative health field and personal growth. We had a lot of therapists and coaches and massage therapists that were needing a place to rent by the hour. And so it was kind of a unique need that we were meeting. And like Joel said, that when we were doing this, it was in addition to all of the other stuff that we'd already created. So we had expanded and expanded and expanded, but we kind of expanded to the point where it was of madness, I guess would be what we'd say. But like having that center was so educational in so many ways, because it was the first time we had a physical location to any of the businesses that we had. And so one of the lessons there,
as far as, because ALCC had the physical location, the coaching center.
Right, but not that we did together.
Yep.
And so we recognized within about a year that the process involved in running a brick and mortar business was something that was definitely moving away from what we had found really worked for us.
Which was freedom.
When we had the experience of the digital magazine on one hand, that was super easy. There's no expenses. Money just comes in, residual income. And then on the other extreme, we had this brick and mortar business with really high overhead and a lot of details to take care of and a lot of people involved in it because we had 5 business partners, including ourselves. And so one of the lessons was also that it's very challenging when you have a lot of cooks in the kitchen. And so that's one of the things that, although we really enjoyed it, that is something that we wouldn't do again as far as that type of business. But that's really, again, like Joel before said, that we're not afraid of failure, but we're also not afraid of, doing something and deciding we don't like it. So there was really nothing wrong with it. It was so clarifying to realize that we wanted to be running our business in a different way. And it had pros and cons, but that in the end, which kind of was that next phase, is that we transitioned out of it.
And we were still doing the coaching. So we were working with a lot of heart centers, indiepreneurs, and helping them establish their businesses. We're still helping people find their purpose. And again, doing many different things as far as that perspective. Also at the time, I was, one of our friends contacted us, and he was in the Caribbean. He was in Puerto Rico at the time. And he was telling me how he was just having like a margarita at the beach, and he was looking at the money that he was making while on vacation. And I said, doing what? He's like, well, I put some online course. I've created some online courses. And this is the person I spent probably like 5 years doing workshops with and conferences and developing curriculums. So I was like, interesting. He said, yeah, I put some classes online on these platforms and created my platform for online courses. And people are buying my courses, and I'm creating passive income. And it really, we looked at each other and I was like, that's interesting. That sounds, obviously we have the magazine, which is a digital product, but creating our workshops into digital products. So we did create a couple of them, 2 different courses that we put out there, but it wasn't something that we could really focus on, even though we saw the potential in it, because we just had so many things going on. Like there's no way that we could, 5 businesses already, we couldn't like expand to like try to touch another business. And we really understood that we needed to do something different at that point.
Yeah. And what was so cool about it though, with the courses, is that at that point, we had created a lot of programs that we were doing in person. So workshops, training programs, coaching, and those first, actually the one that I mentioned where we figured out how to teach other people to create a business in 6 weeks. Well, we called it Quantum Leap Your Business in 6 weeks. And we had been doing that program in person for a while. And so that was actually one of the first, I believe, that we created into a course. And again, it was that realization like, wow, instead of having to do the event over and over and over and over again, we just record it one time and create an online course, and then people could take it all over the world, and we don't have to do anything. And so it was just this amazing experience. And it did start bringing in some residual income. But again, we were in need of a new chapter. And so the next chapter of our journey was letting go. And so, like I mentioned, a couple years after we opened the Otteman Center, we realized that we just had too many things going on. We had 5 businesses plus other random stuff we were doing. And it was just more than we could do justice to each one of those things. So the first letting go experience was deciding to exit the center. And again, like I said, we had 5 business partners. So the 2 of us left it in the hands of the other 3 business partners. And so it kept going without us. And that, in Joel's interview, when he shared his story, he talked about that when he had started the center, kind of in honor of his brother, even though he ended up leaving it, he didn't feel like any sort of loss because he had created something that was going to continue to make a difference, even if he wasn't the one running it. And so that's kind of how we felt about our center, is that it was still serving the purpose that we created it for and being a resource for the community. even though we weren't going to be, physically in the building. It's like we were still there in spirit.
And part of it is that we always have seen ourselves as those people that want to plant seeds. So it's kind of understanding when we need to move on, we plant those seeds, they start growing, start developing. We did our part, that's our part. That's why our purpose we were there for. And also at the time, we started looking at our print magazine because printing had transitioned drastically at the time. And, costs had gone up and things like that. And at that point, again, we had expanded drastically. So we started, people were offering to franchise it out, to go to different cities, different states and pay us for it. But we also started reflecting on what do we want to do? We were actually paying out for the magazine at that point. But we didn't want to continue to do it, the physical magazine, because we wanted to be able to go green, basically.
And really, we did the green in stages. So part of us felt guilty printing magazines that were going to be thrown away because we do care about the environment. So that was always something that kind of hung heavy over our shoulders. And so the first thing we did was we shrunk the size of the magazine by taking our event directory and our business directory out of the print magazine and putting it online. So we created an online directory. And then the next step after that was to see if it worked, because it reduced our expenses and it also helped us have an opportunity to not be making a negative impact on the environment. And so the truth is that it just kept getting worse as far as the expenses going up, the economy just not cooperating. And we got to the point where we decided to go completely green and to stop printing the magazine. And so we converted the local magazine to an online directory. And of course, we kept the digital magazine that was worldwide that we had. So it was like another phase of the letting go process. So we like to call this last part of our journey new beginnings. You see, not only had we just gone through a huge transition with our business, but we had also just come to the end of a period of personal challenges too. So we were like really looking to start over, have a new beginning, be on our true path. And so the first thing that we did is we shifted our focus a little bit and we started creating a collaborative book series. And actually we did create 2 collaborative books called Transform Your Life. And in each one of these series, we had 60 different authors sharing their own personal transformation story, their expertise, and basically how they turned their pain in their life into purpose. And we also continue to do speaking and run conferences and workshops, community festivals, and we also continue to do our life coach training. And then we decided to take a little bit of a break, and we spent the summer traveling. We went to Costa Rica, and then a little while later, we went to Washington, D.C., and that summer is when everything changed. It's actually when we started down another part of our journey, which was an entrepreneur's worst nightmare. But that nightmare turned out to be the biggest blessing. And we're actually going to pick up right where we're leaving off here in the next episode of this podcast. So we look forward to having you there with us when we tell the story of how everything changed and we got to where we are today.
Thank you, fellow Freedom Junkies, for listening. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And if you want to help us grow, please rate and share this podcast. You can also become a member of Freedom Nation. Visit freedomorbustpodcast.com and sign up to receive access to exclusive content and take the 21-day happiness challenge. As you know, we believe that entrepreneurship is the ultimate form of empowerment, which is why we created the Side Hustle Business Startup course for anyone looking to create their own income and take back their power. We offer an exclusive discount for our podcast listeners. Find out more at freedomorbustpodcast.com.